Welcome and thanks again for showing up on your lunch break and joining me for a live session. This is part of a little mini series that I've been doing called pattern hacking, and today I'm going to talk about a second fundamental for pattern makers, which is also really useful for pattern hacking, and that is how you do dart rotation. Now, sometimes you'll see dart rotation referred to as dart manipulation, but basically in pattern making, darts are what create shape, and essentially we would usually have a very simple little block like this, which is for a bodice, and on this example it's got a side bust dart and an under waist dart. Now that is creating shape for the boob to push through the flat piece of fabric. I can choose, however, to move this shaping anywhere within this bodice, and the overall fit will still be good, but it would create a different style. So this is how you would take a basic pattern that you know fits you really well. So I call them tried and trues, or it could be a basic block if you are doing some pattern drafting, and then turn that into a brand new style, but know that the fit is essentially going to be the same as the original. Okay, so it's super easy, and the method I'm going to show you is via cutting. There are different ways of doing dart rotation, but I'm going to use the cut and spread, or the slash and spread method. Okay, so we can move our darts wherever we want around the bodice, or on a skirt, or on a trouser. So anywhere where there are darts, we can rotate them into a new position. So I'm just going to very quickly show you a style. So I'm going to do a really simple for the first demo dart rotation, showing you how we would create what's called a French dart. So a French dart is a long curved dart that comes through the underbust area, shaping the waist out to the side. Sometimes on a dress they come all the way to the hip, on a bodice they come just to above the waist, and they're a great way to show you some dart rotation. So a French dart is a great way of adding shaping not only at the side of the bust, but all the way through the waistline down in towards the hips. I'm now going to show you the basic way to rotate a dart from an original position into a new one. In this example, it's going to be our French dart. Okie doke. So we are going to check on my overhead. So this is my basic block. And can you see I've already marked out new position lines? So the darts on this pattern stop away from the dart apex. So the dart apex, this would be your nipple. So we always want to rotate our darts from this point, but we always want to sew our darts a good inch to 2 inches away from the nipple area, so in a little radius like that. But for what we're doing today, we're going to be using this as our pivot or our slash point. Okay, so first step is for this particular style. If you remember the photo, guys, I only had one dart, which was a curvy dart along this line. So I've now redrawn a line where I want my pattern to open up when I close these two original darts. So for this, I'm going to draw a line through the middle of my bust dart to my apex. And let me just hop onto a coloured pen. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to draw my first dart, first line through up to here, and then I'm going to draw a second line through. In fact, I'm just going to follow one of the legs in this instance, up like that. Okay, so I've let my pens dry out, and this is going to be our second line. So the first thing I want to do is to close this dart here. So this is my bust dart, and I want to get rid of it. So step number one, I'm going to cut along this line that I've just created through the middle of that side bust dart to the apex, leaving a teeny weeny little hinge. And then the place where I want to move this shaping to is my new French dart. So this is this curvy line here. And now I'm going to cut the line that I want to open the shaping into and leave a little hinge. And then what I need to do is to lift up this little section, and I'm going to rotate it so that the original dart leg lines are on top of each other. Essentially, I've then gotten rid of all the dart shaping up here. And can you see what's happened here? The French dart has now formed and opened, and I've gotten rid of my side bust dart. And then I'm just going to tape that into place, like so. So you can see we've closed one of our darts, and we've now created a new curved shaped dart, which in this instance is called a French dart. Now, step number 2, I want to get rid of this dart, because in the French dart you often don't have an underbust dart as well. There's no reason why you can't, but in this example I want to put all of that shape into this French dart. So again, I'm going to follow my first cut line, and again leave a teeny little hinge at the apex, and you rotate this section over until you've gotten rid of all of that shape. And what you see now is that the French dart has become much bigger, because it is now holding all of the shaping that the pattern originally had across 2 darts in one new dart. So that's my first dart rotation, creating a French dart from 2 original darts, a side bust dart which has now vanished and an underbust dart which has also vanished. So the same process of cutting through your original dart that you want to close, and then slashing a new dart where you want to create an opening, and then closing up your first dart, is essentially dart rotation. So for the next example, I'm going to show you the same process of rotating those 2 darts into a new seam line. In this case, we're going to do a princess seam. So I don't know if you all know what a princess seam is, but essentially a princess seam is a curved seam that goes from either the shoulder through the bust towards the waist, or from an armhole through the bust towards the waist. And it's a great way of creating shape without having that kind of pointy effect that you sometimes get with darts. So if you are busty, princess seams are your friend, and they're a very easy thing to change the style line in a regular pattern or a block. Princess seams are quite often used in outerwear. So coats are a great example of a use for princess seams, because you don't necessarily want all that bulk stitched into a dart. So a princess seam allows you to create shape without having a big wodge of bulky fabric. So now we're just going to have a quick look at our princess seam example. So what you're seeing is a coat with an armhole princess seam, and that means that the seam line is running from the armhole towards the bust and then all the way down through the waist to the hem. Right, so I'm going to show you another example of a princess seam, and that is one that comes from the shoulder. So one coming from the bust has got quite a tight angle. But I prefer an armhole princess seam because it keeps this area clear. But if, for example, you have a very hollow chest, then a shoulder princess seam is going to be your friend, because you'll be able to scoop out any excess fabric in the upper chest area from your hollow chest. I'm just going to show you another jacket, this time with a shoulder princess seam. So this is a kind of Chanel style jacket, and you can see those big seam lines that go all the way from the shoulder through the bust down into the hem of the jacket, and that's going to give you the opportunity to shape your upper chest area, particularly useful if you've got a hollow chest. Did that all make sense, the 2 different types of princess seams? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to rotate the darts from your regular pattern with 2 darts. In this case, it's got a side bust dart and an underbust dart into a princess seam. So Beverly has said, how do you know if you've got a hollow chest? So Beverly, don't think about what the diagnosis is. If you find in clothes that don't have a shoulder seam, there's always fabric poofing here. The chances are that your chest has hollowed out and you want a seam line to be able to create some space. So shoulder princess seams just give you more places to fit across the body. So don't get hung up on the diagnosis of hollow chest. If when you're wearing a dress you always find that there's poofy fabric here, then having a seam line in that area will give you space to correct that and make it a better fit for you. So I hope that answers that question, Beverly. So this was our French dart. And then in exactly the same way, I'm going to take a new fresh copy of my block. So guys, if this is your tried and true or a block, what I want you to do is to work on a copy. So never work on the original, because once you cut it up, then there's not, well, you can stick it back together, but it's better to keep your original as a clean copy and do all your hacks or your adjustments to a copy. That way, if I make a total mess of this, I can go back to my original and start over. So again, I'm going to draw in the apex, like so. And if you don't know how to draw the apex, literally draw a line through the middle of, say, this underbust dart, then one through the middle of the side bust dart, and the intersecting point will be your apex. If you want to know where the apex is on you, hold this against yourself and mark a little dot where the apex sits on you, and that will tell you whether or not you need to adjust these darts. So I'm working with a block that I know fits, so I know that the apex is in the right spot. So what we're doing is hacking something that we know fits, rather than making fitting adjustments to a pattern we've never tried. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to draw in this new curved line, and you can use a curvy ruler if you like, or you can freehand this. So just in miniature I'm freehanding it because it's slightly easier than trying to get in a big ruler. And then again I've got my cutting line here and my cutting line there. So the first step with a princess seam is this time I'm not going to close up this dart because I want to keep some of this shaping to allow a good fit in my princess seam. So step number one, just like we did before, we are going to come in and cut along the middle of our side bust dart, leaving a hinge at the apex. Step number two, we're now going to come into our armhole curve line and cut to the apex, again leaving a hinge. So the rotation part of dart rotation is that we're rotating one of these sections, in this case this section. So I lift this up and then I rotate it over, lining up the original dart legs. So I've now closed up my dart. And can you see what's happened here is that I've opened up this new curvy dart, if we were to keep it as a dart, which is going to form the upper part of our princess seam. So I'm now going to stick this in place. And then the next part of the princess seam, quite often you'll find that there's a funny little bump in here. So we just want to very carefully curve that off. And then we are going to curve this because we're going to use the original dart section. So this is going to be removed. And this will become the center front panel. And this will be our side front panel. Now, before I start chopping all of this in half, so I'm going to be removing this in a second, I'm just going to come in and ensure that I give myself a grain line. Now, sometimes I do this and it's parallel with the original one, so I know I've got my grain line in there. And now I can come in and essentially remove the shaping that was formed by the underbust dart and just smoothing off that slight little bump. So you do get this sort of little spike, like so. And then on the centre front panel, again, I'm following the original dart line and then just smoothing a nice line in here. So now we have got the two pieces of our princess seam. Now I would possibly move that dart, that grain line, because looking at this, I'm going to put the apex back together. It just doesn't look quite in the right spot, and then I'm going to draw my grain line. So that looks like a better grain line when the bust line is aligned up here. Okay, so now we've got our side front panel and our centre front panel, and they were both cut from a pattern that you know fits you well. So now you've got a totally different style, but you've retained all the elements of the fit of the original. So let me know what you think of the princess seam. So the princess seam is a really nice way of getting a good fit. And again, if you're very busty, you might find that a shoulder princess is better than a armhole princess. I learnt recently that sometimes it's called a Viennese seam. I mean, I've heard that before. It was just some research that I was doing last week, and I discovered that sometimes they're called Viennese. Other times, armhole princess seams are called a wing seam. So basically, anything that, and it could start right down here, which would give you a really acute shape. It could start here. It could be slightly higher up. In sort of historical garments, we always have the seam coming much closer to the shoulder point. So where you make that first curve line is down to you as the designer of this brand new style. Laura, do you just smooth out the outer line by the armhole where it doesn't meet? It will meet, Laura. So I'm just going to show you on the overhead again. So if we look at this, we haven't changed when we walk these back together. They're exactly the same length, so they do still fit. Optically, what you're seeing is that is pointing upwards, but they're still an exact fit because we just cut that seam from the original. Okay, so they do fit even though they don't look like they're going to fit. I hope that answers that question, Laura. So I've showed you how to create a French dart. So we rotated the side bust and the underbust into a new French dart. Then I showed you how to rotate the side bust shaping into the armhole and create a princess seam. But another thing that's quite nice to do is to rotate the fullness into the neck, and that allows you to have a really nice feature like darts, so sunray pleats or gathers, but essentially you're moving all of the shaping from the bodice up into the neck area, and then you can choose whether you make them stitch darts or folded pleats or tucks or even gathers. So that's a really nice little way to change your pattern. This particular garment that you guys are seeing has got the darts the dart shaping has all been moved into the neckline area. So I'm going to show you now using my original piece how we would take the dart shaping and put that into the neckline. So that allows you to have lots of little stylistic choices in the neck. We're going to set aside our princess seam. So coming back to the block that I originally started with, and this had, well, actually it doesn't matter. I'm going to take the shape from the French dart that I created, and then where this dart was, up into the neck. So this is how you could move any dart. You don't have to start with a pattern piece that's got 2 darts. It could be a pattern piece that's got any kind of dart. So again, we've got our dart shaping in here, and then we've got our new cutting line. So in this instance, I want to open up into the neck. So that's my neck point there. So again, I'm going to cut along the place where I want a new dart to open, and then hinge at the bust point. And this time I'm rotating this whole section here, so the whole half of the pattern, because I've only got 1 dart, and I am closing up that French dart that I originally created. Let me just pop a bit of tape over here. So what you can see now is the French dart has closed and the new neckline dart has opened. So you can see now that the neckline shape is wider, and that allows you to create styles with either darts or pleats or tucks. And this is just a really nice way to show you another example of dart rotation. So again, the original grain line stays true, and then all of the shaping has now gone into the neck rather than around the bust and the waist area. So I hope that the little neckline demo made sense, guys. So you can literally move a dart anywhere. You can take a pattern, and I'll find a resource and I'll put it in the description, and you can rotate that little dart line wherever you like. There's a really cheap book on Amazon that again I'll link to you in the description or in the post when this pops up, and it's a little book that's got a few examples, and it's got miniature patterns to scale that you can use to practice. So really, the sky's the limit. You can put this wherever you like. So dart rotation is a real fundamental in pattern making, and it's also great for hacking your patterns and actually utilizing a bit of creativity in a pattern that you know already fits you. So why keep buying new patterns and having to keep refitting and refitting when you may have a really good basic and you could just change the style up a little bit. The final little example that I wanted to show you was how we might use dart rotation in a skirt. So it's just showing you a different application so that you can use this for other things in your pattern stash, because let's face it, you've probably all got a big pattern stash, right? So why keep adding to it when you could probably just restyle a little bit? And my friend Craig, you just make me laugh, Craig. Oh, I love you too, Craig. So there's another real life friend of mine, Craig, who I haven't seen for ages because he's in Stratford-upon-Avon and we're not allowed to go visit yet, but I can't wait till I come and visit and you give me some more jam, Craig. One of the first things you'd learn as a pattern maker is how to create an A-line skirt from a basic block, and it's a great way to show you an example of dart rotation in a different way. But you guys all know what an A-line skirt is. It's kind of fitted around the waist and then it flares out, a bit like the letter A. Okay, this time I've got a pattern piece for a skirt, and this is just a very simple straight skirt or a skirt block. And then I've got my dart shaping up here. So just like before, I'm going to draw an opening line. So this is where I want the new shape to open out. And then I can draw, let me just give you a little cross. I'm going to carry that line up through this dart. Okay, so I cut from the hem up to the base of the dart and leave a little hinge. So these little hinge points are called pivot points, and that's because there's another way to do this called pivoting, which I'm going to talk about next week. But I think when you've never done this kind of dart work before, slashing and cutting, or cutting and spreading, is an easier way to understand this. So essentially what I want to do is to remove this little bit of shaping by overlapping these two lines. So just like I did with the bust, I'm going to lift this up and rotate this until those two original legs of the dart are on top of each other. And can you see what's happened is now that shape has been projected out into the hem, and our skirt is now a different shape. So it's now an A-line shape. So we've closed up the dart at the waistline, but any pattern pieces that fit the waistline will still fit because the dart would have been sewn before it was joined in, but we've created a new style. So all we need to do now is either to bring in a piece of tracing paper and then trace off our new pattern, or if you are a lazy girl like me, you could just stick a bit of paper in. So I'm tracing off my waistline. So this is the front of the skirt, so it would have a place to fold. And then make a nice smooth curve along there. And if there were any notches or any marks on the pattern, you would trace all of these off at the same time and then label it. So it's skirt front, and that's A-line. I like to give it a version number, and sometimes I date them as well. So now I've created a brand new A-line skirt from the same original pattern that I know fits me well. So if we were to take this original and I unstick this and take it back, you can see the differences. So what we've done is we've added width around the hem, extra width and shape here, but the overall circumference of the waist will still fit you. Okie doke. The A-line skirt was a nice easy one, right? So it's super easy to make new styles just by cutting through some shaping or a dart and then cutting a new position where you want that shaping to move to. So that's your opening line, and then rotating and closing up the original dart. So that was it for the demo part of the session. And this, like I say, this is just a little back to basics series, and it's just showing you some tips and fundamental tools for pattern hacking. So pattern hacking is basically taking something that you've already got, a pattern you've got, and then turning it into a new style. And this is also, if you have got a basic block, how you would turn that into new styles as well. So you can use dart rotation for fit adjustment, so things like if you've got too much gape in the armhole, that's a dart, and then you can then rotate that shape into the existing darts to get rid of gape. But that is a topic for another time. So these short and sweet sessions, guys. Yes, you definitely could do this. So Shelley says, I could do this. That's a housework bin while you play. Absolutely. Like, who needs to do housework, really? Like, it's always more time for housework. If you feel inspired, have a go. The best way to learn how to do these things is just to dive in and practice. All right, guys. I can't see any more questions. So that's just a few little examples of simple dart rotation, which I hope gives you the confidence to grab some patterns and turn them into something new. And next week I'm going to do a little session like this on pivot and slide. So we use the slash and spread method today, and then next week I'm going to talk about another pattern making tool, which is pivot and slide. So hopefully you can join me. If not, it will stay here as a live replay, and I'm going to edit it and pop it up onto YouTube. So that's me saying over and out for now, and hopefully I'll see you next week.